Yes, sir. Thank you for joining me. Now, as we all know, money runs the world. But if you're Black in America, it feels like the treadmill is set to maximum incline. The racial wealth gap isn't just a buzzword. It's the difference between having a safety net and free falling into generational poverty.
The racial wealth gap is, as you know, is staggering. Blacks are about 13% of the U.S. population, but only have 2.6% of the nation's wealth. And that translates into an average household differential between blacks and whites in net worth of about $800,000 in 2016 dollars. That's the gap that needs to be closed by a reparations program. In the aftermath of the Civil War, the ancestors of today's living Black Americans were promised restitution for their years of slavery in the form of 40-acre land grants that were never given to them. So we estimated that if you took the most conservative interpretation of that allocation, it would be 10 acres per formerly enslaved person. So there were 4 million folks who were emancipated at the end of the Civil War. So that would mean 40 million acres of land should have been allocated to them on that basis. And that's the low end estimate. The present value would probably be anywhere between $4 and $6 trillion.
The average white family in America has $188,000 in wealth. The average Black family, just $24,000. Now, that's not even enough to cover a year in college tuition at most state schools. Meanwhile, people are out here saying, why don't they just invest in the stock market? Oh, sure, Brad, because when your rent is due and your car just broke down, your first thought is, let me buy some Tesla stock.
If you've never played the game of Monopoly, let me show you how it's played. I play it every year at my family. It means that everybody, when you sit down, you're given a certain amount of money and wealth. Black people never got their 40 acres and a mule. Now we're playing this game of Monopoly. And let's pretend for a second in this auditorium that whites got $1,000 to play the game of Monopoly. Asians got $500. Hispanics got $300. Indian got $100. And blacks got $50 to play the game of Monopoly. Now, never having gotten your 40 acres of mule, you don't own any land. You don't own any land. And if you don't have the money, you can't put any houses and hotels on the lands. You got lucky and had some. Now, when you roll the dice in our hypothetical game of Monopoly, and you roll the dice and your number comes up on the wrong piece of property, what happens to you? You must either go bankrupt or go to jail. And that's the Monopoly game that black folk are locked into. And when that happens to you in life, when you only got two alternatives in life, to either go bankrupt or go to jail, that is called an underclass.
Here's the kicker. This isn't just bad luck or poor financial choices. The wealth gap exists because of the deliberate policies that kept Black people at the bottom while white people built generational wealth. Remember Andrew Johnson? After slavery ended, Black folks were promised 40 acres and a mule. But Johnson was like, nah, let's give that land back to the plantation owners. So instead of wealth, Black families got sharecropping. A fancy term for back to being broke and exploited.
Dr. Wheeler talked to a woman whose family has been sharecroppers ever since they stopped being slaves. The woman and her husband and 14 children and grandchildren still live on the farm, but it does not support them anymore.
Now that you can buy food stamps, aren't you able to get more food for your family?
I can't buy them every 2 weeks because I don't have the money. I don't have the $33 every 2 weeks. I don't have nowhere to get it from. My husband don't make but $3.50 a day for the city. And that he don't make over $22 or $23 a week. Now I couldn't get the food stamp. They set the price what they want you to pay. And if you ain't got that price, why you don't get no food stamps. I just have to go along with it because I can't do no better. None of the white people, they don't care how you live. Work from is all right, but the living problem, they don't care too much for that.
Why is that?
They don't treat us like they used to treat us. They did used to treat us a lot better than they do. But they don't do that no more. And I imagine, I feel like it because the children go to school together and do a little voting, something they never have did. I never known them to do it. And the younger group can speak a little more plainer, a little more for themselves than we used to do. And that's why the average of the young people is leaving home, going north, why they've been all their life. Some have never been nowhere in their life, but they're leaving Alabama, going north. Because they're getting better jobs and they're getting better treatment. The younger people. Because see, we older people, we still here in it. We ain't like the young ones. And that's the reason I figure they don't care where we go or stay here.
Why do you think they don't care?
I know they don't care. I don't have to think they don't care. I know they don't care.
Fast forward to the 20th century. The New Deal under FDR was a game changer for white families, offering Social Security, housing loans, and job programs. But guess what? Black workers, who were mostly farmers and domestic workers, were excluded from those benefits. And then there's the GI Bill, which helped white veterans build wealth through home ownership and education. Black veterans? Good luck finding a bank or college that would actually honor it. This wasn't a glitch. It was by design.
In the book that I've just completed with Kirsten Mullen, From Here to Equality, Reparations for Black Americans in the 21st Century, we argue that the payments might be made in the form of endowments or a trust account, where individuals would be allowed to spend the interest off the account in any given year, but could only dip into the principal subject to approval for a plan of action or a proposal that they develop. In the present moment, the federal government overnight essentially came up with, well, some people say it's $2.2 trillion. Some people say it's as much as $6 trillion because of the loans that were made by the Federal Reserve Board. But it came up with that money overnight. There were no new taxes administered. And I think that the present experience, or the current experience, demonstrates that the federal government can spend on virtually anything it wants to spend on. You're denying all newly emancipated Black Americans, virtually all of them, you're denying them any initial stake in wealth as compensation for their years of forced labor and forced time under slavery. That's how you begin to create. That's the origin point, I think, for the contemporary racial wealth gap. That's where it started.
So how do we fix this mess? Reparations. And no, this isn't about cutting random checks. It's about targeted investments to close the wealth gap for Black Americans. Think land grants, business funding, free college tuition, and housing subsidies. The kind of stuff that actually builds wealth. Here's the thing. Reparations wouldn't just help Black families. It would boost the entire economy. Studies show that closing the racial wealth gap could add $1.5 trillion to the U.S. economy by 2028 if implemented today. That's more spending, more businesses, more jobs, more for everyone.
How does this study quantify the economic impact of systemic racism?
Well, researchers measured 4 key racial gaps for Black Americans, including wages, education, housing, and investment. And they concluded that if these key racial gaps had been closed 2 decades ago, $16 trillion could have been added to the U.S. economy. Now, according to researchers, facilitating easy access to higher education for Black students would have increased lifetime incomes by $90 to $113 billion. Providing fair and equitable lending to Black entrepreneurs would have resulted in an estimated $13 trillion in business revenue and created over 6 million jobs every year. Improving access to housing credit would have resulted in an additional 770,000 black homeowners and added $218 billion in sales and expenditures. And closing the black wage gap would have added nearly $3 trillion in income. Now, the researchers say that if these racial gaps are closed today, it's not too late. The U.S. can gain $5 trillion of additional GDP over the next 5 years. So basically, this study finds that racism is expensive and inclusion is financially beneficial for the nation.
So yes, Karen, reparations would actually help you too. You can finally afford that Peloton you've been eyeing. Wink, wink. Now let's connect the dots. The wealth gap isn't just about money. It's about opportunity. Without wealth, black families face higher eviction rates, worse schools, fewer business opportunities, and less access to health care. It's a domino effect. Imagine if every black child had access to fully funded schools, every black family could afford a home, and every black entrepreneur had the capital to start a business. Reparations would make that possible. Now, some folks like to say, I didn't own slaves, so why should I have to pay for reparations? Well, Karen, you didn't build the interstate system either, but you're still out here driving on it. Reparations aren't about guilt. They're about fixing a system that is still broken. And let's be real, America has paid reparations before. Japanese Americans got $1.6 billion for being forced into internment camps. Native American tribes have received billions in land settlements. So why is it so hard to pay black Americans for 400 years of unpaid labor and stolen wealth? Imagine a country where the wealth gap is a thing of the past, where black families have the same opportunities to succeed as everyone else. Reparations aren't about division. They're about building a future where everyone wins. The receipts are in America. The debt is real. Reparations are not radical. They're necessary. Now let's make it happen. If you've gotten any value from watching today's video, be sure to hit the thumbs up button. It boosts us in the algorithm so that our message can reach a wider audience. Also, visit the links in the description to check out my book, The Chronicles of Big Mistake. It's available on Amazon right now for the next 30 days for free. So check it out. The link is in the description. With that being said, I'll see you on the next one. Peace. So you made it all the way to the end of the video, but you haven't hit the like button yet. Come on now. You're cheating me, you're cheating yourself. Go ahead, hit the like button. And while you're at it, you might as well smash the subscribe button so you can get notifications every time I drop a video. I make a video every day, a different topic, a different subject. They're all interesting, so you can check them all out by hitting the subscribe button and setting your notifications to all so you get an alert when I drop a video. There you go.